Healers undergo quite a few changes heading on into Mists of Pandaria, seeing powerful new cooldowns, updated talents, and plenty of challenging boss encounters to look forwards to. Today I want to cover each of the available healer specs and go over how they're expected to perform during this expansion so you can get a better idea of what might be the right fit for a main for you during Mists of Pandaria Classic. I'll be using a rating system for each spec too with a few different criteria. Those will be how well they do in early raid tiers, their scaling as in do they get worse as the expansion progresses, remain consistent, or get better. Their complexity, so is the spec easy or more difficult to play? Stacking, are raids actively going to look to stack this spec? Their utility, so does this spec bring strong cooldowns for the raid, and how well they do in arena through PvP. These will be rated from 1 to 5, where 1 is poor, 2 below average, 3 average, 4 above average, and 5 excellent. There is one more thing to mention about maining a healer in general too, which you might want to consider. So during progression, your raid is going to need more healers than when you are on farm. So what people inevitably realize is that they can drop healers on farm and defeat bosses faster, and the healers which aren't as necessary in the raid will be the first to be asked to respec to damage. I'm not saying this will happen in every guild, but especially if you're playing in a more hardcore environment, don't be surprised when this happens. So if you want to play a healer and only a healer, it's often a good idea to pick a spec which more or less cannot be replaced by you swapping to DPS when raids are on farm, unless you want to swap to DPS that is, and you see that as a benefit. So with that said, let's make a start and see how each healer spec is going to perform during Mists of Pandaria. Let's begin with the Restoration Druid. They were already in a pretty solid spot during Cataclysm and maintain a highly mobile and flexible style of healing in MOP. Notable changes for the Druid are an increase on the duration for Life Bloom and their mastery so they can more easily keep them going. They have better tank healing in comparison to Kata, where they can actually do quite well here now. And Efflorescence can now be a totally passive effect on your wild mushrooms thanks to a glyph. This feature is a massive quality of life change since you can always pick where you want your Efflorescence to be. Also, your wild mushroom stores overhealing, and it can be detonated to instantly heal all nearby targets for an amount of healing stored split between them. Resto Druid still keeps that preparation based playstyle where you need to understand when big bursts of damage will be happening so that you can ensure you're as ready as possible to start blasting on heals. And Resto Druid can put out a very decent amount of burst healing now too, thanks to talents such as Incarnation, Nature's Vigil, and Wild Mushroom Detonate. Early on into Mists of Pandaria, they are for sure a very powerful and fun pick to play, and as the expansion progresses, I think they keep a spot of being in the top 3 healers for the entire expansion. I reckon due to their preparation based playstyle, they can be a little more involved to play than certain other healers, and you do need some understanding of how your symbiosis spell will work and which targets will be the best for it given certain encounters. Despite all this, it's unlikely that raids will actively seek to stack Restoration Druids. As good as they can be, having 2 heal over time focused healers has often felt a little bit awkward. Ideally, you need different healing styles to cover others' weaknesses. So as much as I rate the Restoration Druid, if they are brought to a raid, it's likely going to be a one-off. Also, I think that this spec will be considerably more popular in 25 player raids, and is also one of the healers who is likely at some point to be asked to go to DPS once you've got stuff on farm. Resto Druid utility is pretty great, but most of what makes them good is just standard Druid stuff. It's not anything Resto specific, so things such as Innovate, Battle Res, Stampeding Roar, Typhoon, and Ursol's Vortex. Where Restoration Druid is a bit weaker than some other healers is definitely in their cooldowns, where their baseline ones are Iron Bark as a 20% damage reduction on a single target, as well as Tranquility. These are still very good though, others just have things which are a little bit better. Restoration Druids are also expected to perform very well in arena, and they keep their playstyle as a super mobile healer with all that aforementioned utility, and of course you have Cyclone to spam in PvP as well. So Restoration should be a pick that you see fairly often during this area of content in Mists of Pandaria. Next up we have the Priest, and we'll start with Discipline. So the Disc Priest is all about stopping damage from ever happening via their shields primarily, and it's played this way since Wrath of the Lich King, where back then they made Power Word Shield super overpowered and you kinda just spammed it and were one of the best healers. Heading on into Cataclysm, things became less about your shields and more about shielding a bit and atonement healing. Atonement meaning a portion of your damage done would heal allies automatically. Now in Mists of Pandaria, it's like we have the ultimate version of Disc Priest, where they combine the ability to create crazy massive shields alongside good atonement healing, and this spec spec is just straight up overpowered. The fact that Atonement is a smart heal, meaning that it's always going to target people at low health, means just when you're spamming your DPS, you're still going to be getting value all of the time. And this Atonement isn't like more modern Discipline Priests in retail, where you need to have to set up and buff people before Atonement will heal them. It just does this automatically all of the time. This means Discipline is able to contribute some damage too, which on harder fights can make that small extra addition which you sometimes need. As for their shields, a new ability which has to be mentioned is Spirit Shell. This changes it so your heals now shield instead on a 1-minute cooldown. With knowledge of fights, this allows Discipline to set up massive shields on allies so they can block huge amounts of damage from ever happening. Spirit Shell also lines up with a cooldown on Inner Focus, which makes it so spells always crit, which of course translate to even bigger shields. Oh, and your mastery buffs the effects of your shields too. Utility-wise, baseline Disc Priest has Pain Suppression, which allows a single target to live through just about anything, as well as one of the best, if not the best, raid-wide cooldown in Power Word Barrier, which reduces damage taken by all allies inside by 25%. They also have things such as Void Shift to swap health with somebody, Leap of Faith, and they can pick up Angelic Feather too as a powerful mobility tool. You can even cast Penance whilst moving now thanks to a glyph. So of course throughout the whole expansion you should expect all raids of all sizes to want Discipline Priests, as they are so good. In terms of difficulty on the Disc Priest, similar to Resto Druid, you do need some advanced knowledge of fight so you can set up your shields to ensure you're making the most of your kit, which I'd say gives them a bit of a learning curve on newer content. Stacking Discipline Priests will now absolutely be a thing in Mists of Pandaria, especially in 25 player raids on progression. Unlike previous expansions, there really isn't a downside to bringing more than one of their spec given how good they are, so raids will be seeking out more than one Disc Priest for sure. As talked about before, their utility is great with one of the most powerful raid-wide defensives in the game, if not the most powerful in Power Word Barrier, on top of having a healing style which is just, well, it's just inherently overpowered. Blizzard eventually had to move priests away from their shield playstyle and more into Atonement for heals. In PvP, Discipline is also set to fare well, equally benefiting from their strong healing playstyle, as well as contributing damage as an extra benefit across a wide variety of comps. All in all, Discipline has to be one of the top 2 healers for Mists of Pandaria, and should be very much in demand for all areas of content. Holy Priest in comparison feels similar to Wrath and Kata though, as it is still just lagging behind Discipline. Where Discipline is all about stopping damage from ever happening, Holy Priest is more of a throughput based healer, where they can just put out tons of raw heals. But oftentimes demand for this healing style has already been covered by other classes who also bring much better cooldowns, which will always leave a lot of people asking, why are you not playing Discipline instead? Due to this, as well as mana issues in low levels of gear, Holy Priest isn't expected to see much play early on in Mists of Pandaria, but they do scale very well with gear, however, as the expansion progresses. I think by some later raid tiers you could get away with playing Holy fine on certain fights, where perhaps the standard double disc combo doesn't feel as necessary. Difficulty wise, Holy Priest's main concern is being in the right chakra for the right moment. Serenity focuses more on your single target heals, whereas Sanctuary is for more AoE situations instead. It's another spec where fight knowledge and being able to prepare for incoming damage is important. Stacking wise, as we understand the game right now, Holy Priest isn't really expected to be picked up all that often in early MOP, to be honest. It may just be a one-off spec here and there later on in the expansion, so I wouldn't say it would be stacked. Their utility is just not on the same level as Discipline either, or many other healers for that matter, and the main things they offer are Lightwell and Divine Hymn, both of which are fine on throughput heals, but that's kind of it. In PvP, this spec is also unlikely to see much play compared to Discipline, being comparatively lacking when it comes to defensive options and utility. Overall for Holy Priest, it might see some play later on in Mists of Pandaria, or for a bit of fun during farm raids, but it's not considered to be one of the meta healers this expansion. Next up is the Monk with their brand new healing spec, the Mistweaver. During Mists of Pandaria, the Mistweaver has a pretty unique healing style, where again it's about setting up your heal over time effects and then topping targets off spending chi with uplift. You also want to be in melee range to take advantage of fist weaving. Through this, your various melee abilities will enhance your heals and generate resources for you. Early on, Mistweaver is expected to be a solid pick in terms of mainly being a throughput based healer that can also offer some damage as well. Their scaling with gear is also quite good, and they should certainly improve as the expansion progresses. I reckon this spec is also fairly complex to play, as simply put they have so many different buttons to press. There is fist weaving going on, there's managing your mana through mana tea, there's keeping renewing mists going, not overcapping your chi, using your cooldowns and taking advantage of your mobility. There will be decisions to be made on each fight, where a great Mistweaver monk will definitely be able to stand out from one who's kind of just sitting at the back and channeling soothing mists. In terms of stacking, Mistweaver is another pick that may be a one-off, primarily in 25 player raid environments, and this is the space where they're the most likely to see play. It's a similar story to a few other healers as to why this is, where the healers that are stacked are often bringing both throughput heals and a ton of utility, and healer spots just tend to be a bit more limited on average. Speaking of utility, Mistweavers of course have your standard monk stuns and interrupts, and their main cooldowns are Life Cocoon as a good single target absorb, usually on your tanks, as well as Revival, which instantly heals your raid and removes negative effects on them. In PvP, Mistweaver should also be a solid pick as well, offering good on the move heals, very high mobility, and some damage. They also have a passive called Dematerialize, which makes attacks miss them for a short duration after they are stunned. This is a super powerful defensive just to have in your kit, which happens automatically. Overall for Mistweaver Monk, I think they'll see the most play as a one-of in 25 player raids and for Arena. I think they are a spec which could be asked to flex into DPS, but perhaps not as easily as Resto Druid could, and that's simply because the Monk's DPS spec is melee, and adding melee to your raid can be problematic. And now we have the Shaman, and Resto Shaman has seen big improvements compared to Cataclysm, and it was already good there as well. Something to know is that totems are more short duration buffs now, rather than persistent things you just have down all of the time. On top of that, there is a tier of talents that allows you to modify your totems in a variety of ways too, such as resetting some of their cooldowns or allowing them to be redirected via totemic projection. Early on into Mists of Pandaria, the Resto Shaman is a beast of a spec, offering great heals for stack groups through Chain Healing and Healing Rain, and also offering good single target heals. They have seen some quality of life improvements too, such as Chain Heal no longer consuming Riptide, so you can spread this heal over time effect across the raid much easier. Resto Shaman scales amazingly too, and their mastery providing more heals at lower health values is just such a great passive effect to have all of the time. I'd say they're a bit more straightforward to play than other healers as well, with most of the skill coming from timing cooldowns correctly, but other than that you're just blasting a ton of throughput heals. Resto Shaman should be the second healer of Mists of Pandaria that is expected to be stacked, again more so in 25 player raids, just because more heals are overall needed. This is in part due to their great throughput as well as their utility, and speaking of utility, Resto Shaman just has so much of it. They have Tremor Totem, Grounding Totem, Windwalk Totem to immune root effects, Ancestral Guidance to duplicate heals, Ascendance which also duplicates heals, Healing Stream Totem, Healing Tide Totem, Mana Tide Totem, and Spirit Link Totem. So this spec just has an unreal amount of buttons to press, which makes bringing them to raid very good. Resto Shaman also does well in PvP too. I wouldn't say they are as dominant as they are in PvE, but they're another good pick that can fit into a variety of comps. So again, with their excellent utility and a bunch of cooldowns, they should see a good amount of play here as well. Last for the healers is the Holy Paladin, where for the first time ever in World of Warcraft during Classic, they are not expected to be a top tier pick during this expansion. They had some nerfs midway through Mists of Pandaria, and since we'll be playing on the last patch from day one, that style of class balancing isn't going to be doing any favors for the Holy Paladin. I know they were definitely good back in the day during some of the earlier tiers, but outside of Blizzard doing any targeted changes, the Holy Paladin may not be seeing as much play as it typically does. They just don't offer as much as other healers do early game, particularly when it comes to their AoE healing, where they feel noticeably lacking. Usually Holy Paladin compensates by being the go-to tank healer, but Blizzard started to adopt a different style of tanking in Mists of Pandaria, where tanks start to become much more self-sufficient in terms of their own defensives, absorbs and heals, and other healers can compete on single target while seriously outpacing them on AoE and utility. They scale well enough with gear of course, but I'm not convinced they will do so to the point where people on Resto Shaman or Disc would ever really consider swapping, or that guilds would suddenly want to pick up a Holy Paladin mid-expansion. They're also pretty straightforward to play in managing and spending your holy power, whilst also taking advantage of your cooldowns. Their utility as a paladin is is good as always though, with Avenging Wrath, Divine Favor, Guardian of Ancient Kings, as well as their various hands and blessings, so this is definitely a positive for the Holy Pally. Stacking wise, I think it goes without saying, but this won't be another expansion where you're always seeing multiple Holy Pallies per raid. In PvP, I think they're overall set to perform better than PvE, where they can find spots in several comps that allow for them to better utilize their utility heavy kit. Overall for Holy Paladin, I don't want to be a doomer on the state of them. I played this spec throughout Kata and it was a lot of fun, but from what we know about Mists of Pandaria at the moment, this is just an expansion where final patch balancing doesn't favour this spec too well. Then again, who knows what Blizzard will do and whether they will step in to make any changes. But as we are right now, that is the expected state of healers in Mists of Pandaria. So really it's Discipline Priest and Restoration Shaman at the top, followed by Restoration Druid, Mistweaver, and then Holy Priest and Holy Paladin, I would say. At the end of the day though, your preferred heal comp and what you want to play should always be important, but harder content tends to really benefit from more meta picks just by the nature of it being difficult. Which healer are you planning to main for Mists of Pandaria though, and do you think things will turn out differently from what I've gone over here? Let me know below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.